Hi guys, it's my quick tutorial on black and white photo processing in Lightroom 3.5. If you're using another version of Lightroom, it's all relative as they're all pretty much the same in the layout and the functionality. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get to this effect and walk you through step by step how I get to it. For reference, there's the original. You can see there's quite a bit of difference, but it's relatively easy to do. So what I'll do, I will go back to the import. This is what the photo looked like on import. This was from a wedding I did recently. It's one of my favourite pictures. So I always start with the basics, the crop, get a rule of thirds, like so. Now the actual black and white conversion, I don't use the saturation slider. I just think it's quite restrictive. What I do use is the black and white button there. It gives us quite a bit of freedom to change specific parts of the image. So say if I wanted to change the background, which is green and yellow, I then can change the green and yellow, and I can reduce or increase the exposure. The same goes for pretty much all of the image. If I wanted to adjust its skin tone slightly, it would be the yellow, I think, the orange, sorry. There we go. You get the picture. Sorry, go back to the convert to black and white. Okay, so we have our black and white image now. It's a basic tab. The histogram. Anything to the left hand side is underexposed, anything to the right hand side is overexposed. The ideal photo will be in this section here. There's a quick way to check for parts of the image that are underexposed. You click that, anything in blue is underexposed, so as you can see the only part is that. I'm not worried about that at all. Overexposed is that. I'm not really worried about that either. The image is pretty much well exposed. I'll process the photo and then I'll come back and check the exposure again. So the first things first, white balance. You would think that on a black and white image it doesn't affect the image, but it actually does. It works in a pretty similar way to the exposure slider, but I don't really have much to do with it. The first thing I always do, reduce the brightness. I don't like how Lightroom uses brightness to increase the Vast has been updated. I don't like how brightness increases the overall brightness of the image for the exposure slider. It gives you a more contrasty look. You'll see I probably got more blown out. There you go. But still, I prefer the look it gives. The recovery slider, we'll come back to that in a moment. First thing I'm going to do now is increase the blacks, like so. Get some nice contrast on the image. So you can see now already we've got some nice dark patches. A little bit that's lost, not too worried about. We'll fix that and reduce this contrast slightly, as I don't really like these sliders here. Recovery. Now you'll see there's quite a bit of the image that's lost. I'm not worried about the background, but I am worried about the shirt. I don't like blown highlights on clothes. So what I'm going to do is increase the recovery just a little slightly, and I'm not worried about those little parts. We've got rid of all blown highlights near enough. The next thing I'm going to do, to reduce contrast but keep the blacks, a little technique that I use, you can increase the fill light like so, and you'll see that this has the opposite effect of the black slider. If I increase the fill light ever so slightly and then drop the exposure so I don't overexpose the image, in fact I'm going to increase that exposure slightly. It's more of a high key look. I'm quite happy with that for the basics. If we compare that to the original, you get the picture. Clarity. Now I like to use clarity on my pictures. It gives them a bit of punch, a bit of an edge. Clarity is actually mid-tonal contrast, mid-range contrast. So as you can see, when I increase the clarity, you get a smaller. You get the idea of what it does. It's negative clarity, however. That's what we use for skin smoothing. So as you see, if I drop the clarity, the image goes rather strange looking. However, if I set that back to 0 or slightly positive and get the soften skin brush, you see here, soften skin, it's actually minus 100 clarity. So if I was to want to smooth this skin, I can use that on the areas that I need. On the original image I didn't smooth the skin, but I'm showing you this just for demonstration purposes only. So you never go over the nostrils and you never go over the eyes. The rest is okay, or the eyebrows, sorry, as well. So if I just smooth the skin, I'll just do a quick job so you get the general idea. Like so. Okay, so if I now so as you see, if I turn this brush off, you see the difference? There's a massive difference. The skin is a lot smoother. Probably not for the best onto this black and white image, but as I say, it was just for demonstration purposes only. So yeah, clarity. I like to give a little bit of clarity. It adds a bit of punch to the image, and yeah, it's I think it looks good anyway. Okay, so we'll move on from the basic tab. We've got the tone curve. In this instance, I will be going strong contrast. I do it on most of my black and white conversions. You do have the ability to manually adjust. You see in the background the histogram. Now we can see that most of the image is here in this peak, and you can see that that comes under the highlights tab. So I can either manually adjust the highlights to reduce the exposure of the highlights, or I can manually adjust the tone curve by clicking and dragging. It's a good way to specify certain parts of the image that you want to fix. I don't actually have a part of the image that I need to fix at the moment, so we'll just leave it at that. Obviously we covered the black and white tab earlier. I'm quite happy with the way the image looks. I've no need to actually change any of this. The only other part that I really touch on black and white conversions is the effects part. Now this is where you put in the vignette. You can put in a vignette two ways. You can either use this as an effect. Obviously that's way too much. If you just leave it around go for about -20, you can see the effect that that's had. There is that way to do it, or there's another way. If I set that to 0, it gives a slightly different effect. If I enable the profile corrections and just go Sony, doesn't really matter. The vignetting part here, I can add a slight vignette. It's not showing as much on this contrasty image, but it does show on a well exposed bright image. As I said, there's two different ways to do it, and that is about it. That is the way the image looked originally, and I would be saving that as a preset, which I have. As you can see, that's ever so slightly exposed differently on my preset. I have several different black and white presets. This is the one that I really enjoy using. As of this one, which again, it's less contrasty. Works in some situations, other situations it doesn't. I have a real high contrast black and white, which is basically more blacks, more exposure, less fill light. There's quite a lot lost on this image. It would need some work done to it before it was a finished article, but yeah, that is basically how to process a black and white photo in a Lightroom 3.5.